beautiful beings of light. Welcome to the Crone Zone, Conversations with the Ancients. My name's Priscilla, and this is my co-host, Heather.
Hi.
Hey, Heather. How are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
I am really looking forward to this. I have a quick question. We didn't talk backstage, but did you throw cards for tonight at all?
Not yet, but I can.
Okay. I was going to say, we totally forgot about.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
Exactly. This is really
It'll
exciting.
only take me a minute.
Hey, Teresa, how are you tonight? Thanks for being here. Laura Hammond Davis and White Dragon. Look at you guys popping in quick. The remote viewing by Heather on Machu Picchu is going to drag them in tonight. It's so exciting. I can't wait. She's already given me a little bit of it. But
well, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah. Hi, Mary Ellen and Joyful Journey. How are you, Sonia? I'm excited. I didn't throw cards today.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. But we do have a slideshow. Does everybody know where Machu Picchu is in Peru?
Yeah.
Built by the Inca, supposedly. Are we going to find that out? Was it built by the Inca, Heather?
Beg your pardon?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was concentrating on the.
Hey, Jules. How are you, Julie?
Okay. Basically, we are worthy of all that's going on. We are worthy of getting through everything. Okay. But sometimes our own creativity, it's called birthing, but our own creativity gets in the way. And we doubt ourselves, and we shouldn't. Just because we're doing something different, you have to remember you are worthy. You don't have to worry about it. And of course, our higher selves are saying, we're starseeds. We're good. We're good.
I like that violet light around that.
Yeah. And our humans are still trying to be committed. You know, we're trying to commit to everything.
Sometimes I think I should be committed.
I wasn't talking about that kind, but it did occur to me. It did occur to me. But they were saying, you know, if we remember all our gifts, because we are gifted, then we don't need to forget that we are worthy. We can get over the creative. We are gifted. We can do everything we want. And I finally figured out what they meant by storm. I mean, we can storm the gates of you know where and be in heaven.
Okay.
We are gifted. We are worthy of being there. We can storm against anything that's trying to stop us.
Sounds good to me.
We are gifted.
We just need to remember that love conquers all.
Absolutely.
We just have to be.
That is the largest gift.
It is.
Yeah, that's the largest gift.
So, I hope you guys got to see Valerie on Saturday. She was here talking about the full moon and other stuff. And she's on right now with Diana. So we'll have to watch that later, talking more about this full moon. And happy full moon to everybody. Be sure and
happy
rituals done and release anything that's no longer serving you. That's the name of the game for this full moon and every full moon, really. But this is particularly
and also the eclipse, because it's only a couple days later.
No, that is the solstice, not the solstice, the other one.
The other one. Okay.
It's relatively tonight, and then we have the equinox. Thank you.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, equinox is in 2 days, I think. Okay, but tonight we're going to talk about Machu Picchu, which is like in Peru. It's 7,900 feet, above sea level in the Andes Mountains. And it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983 and named one of the new 7 wonders of the world in 2007. And it's a site of an ancient Inca ruin located about 50 miles northwest of Cuzco, Peru, in the Andes. It's perched between, the Urubamba River Valley in the middle of a tropical mountain forest. We did not get up there. Excuse me. Look at that river way down there.
That is a really cool picture.
Isn't that a beautiful picture? I wanted to use it for the background, but other cool pictures too. So it's actually in the middle of a tropical mountain forest in a narrow saddle between two sharp peaks. Machu Picchu, which means old peak, and Hayana Picchu, which means new peak. Machu Picchu was believed to have been built around 1450 AD for the Incan emperor Pachacuti. Now, I haven't talked to Heather about anything. This is just the research I have that we have found on actually for a previous show that we did on Machu Picchu. So I've redone that a bit, but I haven't gone through it with Heather. Though, of course, she knows a bit about it, but I know pretty much nothing about what she found. So this is what the scholars are saying, and then we're going to hear what Heather has to say from her remote view.
Right. And you have to remember, although the citadel is located only about 50 miles from Cusco, the Inca capital, it was never found and destroyed by the Spanish, like a lot of other Incas. And I do have an explanation from them for part of that.
Cool.
But there's also evidence that the Incas themselves, as they abandoned the cities, burned some of the constructions and paths around so that it was not so easily spotted. And based on what I've found, that's why these terraces are blank, just grass. There were buildings there, but there aren't now.
Right.
And over the centuries, the surrounding jungle grew to enshroud the site, and very few people knew that it existed. It wasn't until 1911 that Yale University professor and explorer Hiram Bingham brought the lost city to the world's attention. Machu Picchu looms about 2,000 feet above the serpentine Urubamba River and the tropical mountain forests of the upper Amazon basin. And the city's finely honed granite blocks comprised dwellings, agricultural terraces, and storehouses, plazas, and temples, and some other things I'll tell you about. And it's recognized.
You're such a tease.
I'll tell you. Okay. And it's recognized as a feat of architectural planning, engineering, and stonemasonry, and was built without the use of iron tools or drought animals.
The Incas had knowledge of incredibly advanced construction and stonework techniques. One of these used in the most sacred elite structures is known as ashlar. The Incas perfected this by cutting pieces from the large white granite rocks in quarries at Machu Picchu. The stones were then carved and polished in the right shape to fit together exactly, tightly, without use of mortar or clay. Like the walls in the pyramids, in Egypt, a thin blade or sliver of paper cannot be fit between stones. This one here reminds me of so many that we've seen all over the world, other places in Peru, but other places around the world.
Mm-hmm.
They often built constructions around impressive rocks, an example of their organic construction methods. Most of the staircases were carved from one slab of stone. This technique makes the constructions much more earthquake resistant than most modern buildings. It allows for the stones of the dry stone walls to move slightly and resettle without any walls collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
And the trapezoidal design of the doors and windows help make it much more solid, enduring construction.
Yep.
There's one there.
And of course, earthquakes happen frequently in Peru. The Machu Picchu was built on several fractures or tectonic fault lines. And apparently there's evidence that the Incas knew this. I mean, just look at how they put it together. So the Incas were a spiritual people as well, and they believed the world and environment were sacred. Pachamama, Mother Earth, cared for them, and they in turn were responsible for her care. The Inca believed the spirits of their creator resided in the natural elements: the sun, the moon, the earth, mountains, rivers, rocks, trees, wind, those things. And they erected temples and other ritual spaces to honor these spirits, including many at Machu Picchu. When they're not grouped together, they're in like different areas.
Hmm.
The Incas were devoted to the sun god Inti. And it was Inti's graces that the earth was nourished and harvest were either blessed or cursed.
Inti and Pachamama were the main gods of the Incan civilization. Between the two of them, all things, all creatures came into being, and they held dominion over all. They exercised their authority through the Incan emperor. Divination dominated daily living. Everything from treating illness to choosing the right sacrifice was determined by the high priest. Consulting the oracles, watching the path of a spider, observing scattered cocoa leaves, or most potent yet, the drinking of ayahuasca. Inca treated the religions of those they conquered with tolerance, just as long as those people revered Inca gods the highest. They became a melting pot of beliefs and traditions. As the emperor was considered to be a descendant of the gods, religion and politics intertwined at many points. They also believed in a staggering number of deities. The sun and the earth took center stage. But just as there was a complicated hierarchy among the Incas and their people, there was a complicated hierarchy among the gods they worshipped.
The Incas believed in balance of duality, day and night, up and down, life and death. And there are aspects of Machu Picchu that reflect this belief in balance and symmetry. Just look at the buildings and how it's put together. You can see it. In the southern part of the ruin is a sacred rock, also known as the Temple of the Sun. June 21st, the sun shines in the window at first light. It centers on an inclined rock mass with a small grotto. Walls of cut stone fill in some of its irregular features. And the Temple of the Three Windows is a hall. It's 35 feet long and 14 feet wide with 3 trapezoidal windows. And the largest is known in Inca architecture as one wall, which is built with polygonal stones. So, it just has to be done just the right way. And the sundial consists of a wide pillar and pedestals that was carved.
Wait a minute, you missed a line.
I missed one. Oh, near the main plaza is the Intihuatana hitching post of the sun. It's uniquely preserved ceremonial sundial. And it consists of wide pillar and pedestal that was carved as a single unit and stands 6 feet tall. Great sundial, huh, guys?
Pretty big. Machu Picchu is an ancient Inca citadel located in the Peruvian Andes. It is one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world. It is considered a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the 7 new wonders of the world. Built in the 15th century, Machu Picchu was abandoned by the Inca Empire and remained unknown to the outside world until its rediscovery in 1911. It is an exceptional example of Incan perfectionist construction and stonework craftsmanship. Built at the height of the Inca civilization's power, it is beautifully and mysteriously set deep within the majestic Andes mountain range. Machu Picchu captivates tourists not only for its dazzling architectural beauty, but also for its important historical, cultural legacy, which has led it to be recognized and admired throughout the world. Yeah. Now we get to hear the real story.
No, just some more. Anyway, when I went to go view it, I kept getting, you can look at all the pictures of it. We're not going to have you just look at buildings. That's not what we're here for. We're going to tell you about it.
That is so cool.
Which they did. And I kept asking forever and ever, who am I talking to? Who am I talking? I keep asking questions and I get answers that say, who are you? And they kept telling me, and I didn't understand a word of what they said. I finally said, okay, a name I can say. What's your name? And Alex came to me. So
was Alex an Incan person from back then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know what he did, what his title was or anything about him?
No, he was just a guide because we didn't stay. He stayed with me the whole time, but we didn't necessarily stay in the same places or times necessarily.
Right.
So he was with me the whole time. For one thing, most of the people there, they stayed trim simply because of the altitude and the amount of exercise they did. And when you look at all the different levels they have, each one represented something different. And if you look at some of the pictures, they show you archways. If you go through one of the archways, you're going into a different section of town. I
Cool.
kind of got the impression of, yes, it's a great big country.
Let me see
Sort
if
of.
this is it. That's not one of them.
That's not it. But there
Like,
were
what about
archways
this part?
that if the wall closest to us goes up and over, that's an archway. But there were places where you could find archways like there. You were going into a different part of town.
Interesting.
And each town was, and I got the impression it was kind of like New York City with different boroughs, Queens, Long Island, things like that. That's kind of how it was broke down. But it was all Machu Picchu. It just had its own little areas. Everything they needed.
Like a shopping district, a praying district, or something like that.
Yes, and there was more than that. Some of the bigger buildings were not necessarily homes. Some of the bigger buildings were just because of the weather up there. Of course, that's the reason why the walls are so tight, to keep the wind from getting through to them. But it was all kept together. Excuse me. Can you hear that? Okay. There was something going on. Anyway, that's why the walls are so tight, to keep the wind out. And that's and they didn't have mortar because the mortar would just break off. And especially with all the earthquakes, things couldn't shift. So it was built that way on purpose.
Do you know who actually built everything?
The Incas pretty much built it, but I think it was the extra help. I really think that was, they did have visitors, like as aliens, but they didn't land. The visitors kind of like, beam me down, Scotty. They would be there and help.
Yeah, where would they land on top of the
Andes?
Yeah.
They just beamed down. And they weren't there all the time. They were just there at different times. Evidently, somebody had asked for help, and if you ask for help, you're given it. And we know that they were all around the whole world, or we wouldn't see so many things and areas the same. But they were self-sufficient. For instance, they made their own clothing. They did have a growing season. It was shorter, but they had a growing season, and they had the water to help with it. And I don't know if one of those pictures shows it, but they had fields in the one large area. That was an older area. And the newer area, all we can find now are the terraces, and they're green on top. But in the older areas, you had this whole area of buildings, but in the middle were fields.
I don't know if does that show anything?
Right in the middle, you can see that there's fields.
Yeah.
There was expansion. That's why it all moved out closer to us. You can see where they had rows closer to us. Right. And remember that some of that rock that they used was rock that they had cut to be able to make the terraces. There's rock underneath it. So some of the rocks that they used to build were from there. Were from those places where there's nothing left.
Where they terraced, where they removed rock from the terraces, they reused it and built it.
Look at how square they are.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
And they just moved them to where they wanted them. They didn't
They
have
moved what to where they wanted them?
the rock, the huge stones.
How?
I get this picture in my head of things like they were pulled along the ground over rollers of some sort.
What exactly did the aliens do then?
They helped them get things going. And the rollers are not the rollers that we would know. They would, and they helped as far as physics to make things move quickly.
Okay.
But they helped with the design because that was just all hills. And if they were trying to build on it, everything was lopsided. They helped them make it so that it wasn't.
They helped them design the basic design. Okay.
Right. And if you look at the field in the middle there, that's pretty much protected by the weather and from the weather.
Right.
So that's where they grew things. They also had their animals around there. They could take the animals. Some of those buildings were put the animals in when it was really stormy, so they were protected. But and some of those
If I could find another view.
but they were smaller, and I just put them in there. But they were very self-sufficient. But some of those bigger buildings was like a gathering place. For instance, if they had, after they sheared and got whatever hair or wool or that kind of thing, I'll show you.
From the llama.
Mm-hmm. The llama fur, when they were making the cloth, it wasn't just one. A bunch of them came together, and it was in this big thing. So a big room. They, one, kept each other warm because there was a crowd. Two, they had somebody to talk to. It was very social. And so everybody was enjoying themselves while they were doing all these things. It wasn't just sit at home and make it yourself. No, it was social, which I thought was kind of interesting. I said, well, that's cool.
Community,
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, can you tell me why they built there? Why they built in that particular spot? Why did they go there?
They wanted to get away from all the rest of. They were very peaceful.
They were trying to get away from the Spaniards. Then that part is true.
Not just the Spaniards, but also those who lived in the lower climates. They were less peaceful,
more warrior-like.
Yeah, and then it's like when they did have like trains of llamas going up and down for trade. They made everything they needed to an excess so they could go down and trade for anything else that they wanted. But it was the further down the mountain they got, the more dangerous it was.
Okay, that makes sense. So were they more spiritual than the ones below, or were they more did they have more priests or something like that? Or
the ones down the mountain tended to be more materialistic.
Okay.
And if you wanted to talk about dimensions, they were more third dimension, and those on Machu Picchu were more fifth dimension.
Interesting.
That's just using as an example so you can see the difference.
Our kind of terms. Okay, we have a question, a quick question I thought you might want. Did they use the monolithic stones or just smaller ones? Well,
they did both.
Yeah, there were both in those pictures.
They used both.
Let me see if I can.
Like some of those are huge stones.
Well,
but they,
these are huge. These
right.
Bottom stones are enormous.
But if you look at the top, they're not. So they didn't waste anything. They used everything. So if you want to go to the last slide of the animals, because they were showing me the kinds of animals. Now, those are mountain animals, and they didn't show me all of those. And of course, all the ones that I'm going to mention, the ones that they had were ancestors of these. But these are, when I looked at these pictures, they were saying this one, and this one, and this one. And so the Ibex is one. And I'm not sure where he's at.
Let me see. I can't see it that well. Let me see.
And of course, chamois and domestic yaks and llamas and goats, mountain goats.
Oh, the ibex is the top right hand with the horns.
Yeah.
Alpine ibex.
Most of them were like wildlife, and they did do things to, they went out hunting, so they did have meat. Mostly they used things like yaks and goats for milk. And they used llamas and things like, some of those are very furry, and they would use, trim them and use that for making cloth. And it was very, very, very warm, which it needed to be. And it needed to also be very dense because of the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can. But the bread was made daily. It was more like what we call flatbread. But they do, no way to keep it. So you just ate everything as they got it. Let's see. Stones. The nice thing about the stones is the way they set up the homes. There was one hearth, and usually if it was a big home, they had another hearth on the other end. But the stones would keep it warm. They would just
Absorb the heat
relay
from
the
the
heat
fires.
from where yeah. At the same time, they didn't need to worry about it being hot in summer. Sorry, it wasn't.
7,200 feet above sea level. I doubt seriously if it was ever
But
hot.
it did get enough sun for them to grow crops. So,
Who taught them how to grow crops?
those were aliens. They didn't know.
Do you know what kind of aliens were there?
No, I just got the impression that there had been different aliens beamed down. It was never just one. There were several different species of aliens that said hello. Most of the quote rooms were formed by when they would weave their things, a great big blanket that became the wall. They didn't put stone walls up in between. So if they wanted it to be cooler, they just lift those up. If they wanted it to be warmer, they would lift it up till it was warm enough and then put it down and keep it there. So traveling was dangerous, especially at lower altitudes. So being high, it helped them with their independence. And actually, if you look at Machu Picchu, it's almost like a fortress.
Oh, yeah, it is, for sure.
And that
So
was
who actually built it? Was there an Incan king, like it said in our research? Was that who built it? Because at one point it sounds like it was, I think they thought it was like his summer home for a while, but that was one of the long time ago what they thought. What was his name?
what I'm getting is that the whole thing was with the help of the aliens, it was designed by one of their priests. And if you look at that picture, there is like you've got the whole area of Machu Picchu, and then there's one area that has steps to go up because it's a separate mountain, and there are ruins on the top. That was one of the main temples.
Okay.
And they could yell down from there, or because that was a very major temple.
To whom? A temple to whom?
That was to the earth. That was to the earth.
So it was about the sun and Pachamama,
Right.
Mother Earth. Okay.
Right.
And did they have shamans?
Right. They did.
Are the shamans the one that communicated with the aliens?
No, actually, the shaman wasn't the highest rank. The shaman went among the people.
Okay.
Whereas the priest, when they were up there at the temple, they stayed there. They very rarely came down to the
So
people.
they kind of lived at their temple.
Hmm. And they might send messages down through the shamans. Once you were in Machu Picchu, it's kind of like farmers, they never left. They didn't go south and didn't go down the mountain to be in the cities. Very few of them did that. It's like farmers, what are you going to do when they leave? No, most of them didn't, because they knew they were safe and they were happy and had what they wanted there. So they pretty much just stayed there. The government was both male and female. It was balanced, which makes sense from what you said. Pretty much, if you were a goat herder, if your dad was a goat herder, you were probably a goat herder too. You just kind of followed what the family did. Although you could break out of it, it just basically you just stayed with what the family had.
Were the shamans the healers? Did they have what kind of healing? How did they heal each other? What did they do for healing?
They did use herbs, and they used energy. The shamans were pretty powerful. It's just that they were not in charge. It was the that were in charge.
So were the priests? Wasn't it there an Incan root? Wasn't there an Incan ruler? Wasn't the Incan ruler higher than the priests?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or sometimes it was both. And some of that was both. He was both the priest and the ruler. You know, he was all that there is. All. Had a short growing season.
I bet it would be.
All those terraces are definitely planned, and those terraces were rock. That's where some of that great big rock came from, and they were really good at being able to make the wedges or whatever it was. The aliens helped them make those large blocks, so that when those blocks pulled away, it was pretty level underneath, pretty level on the other side. They were just the big blocks, and they would cut them once they got the great big things out, unless they knew what size they wanted first. And all that green that we see now wasn't green. A lot of it was rock. It's just become green over time.
Yeah, like any place will.
Because it used to be that, like, the rock chips or whatever else they needed to do in order to have really close, tight things, those were put down on the road. Like I said, they didn't waste anything. They used everything. Let's see.
Did you happen to go back, do your time travel thing and see people in action working and living there, anything like that?
I saw the weavers with whatever they used for spinning. I saw them. I also saw they were woodworkers. There were some woodworkers. Of course, you had the forest to go from, but there were some that were there. Generally, all the cooking was done individually at home, because they all needed to have that hearth in order to keep the building.
Your home warm.
Right.
The wool would have come from the Leah. The wool would have come from the llamas.
Say that. Yes. And you can. I know even now you can weave dog hair. So if they had any of the other animals, especially during the wintertime when they were penned up and had all that hair, they would go in and grab all that, weave it.
What did they burn? Wood there in the forests. It's not just It's not just rock. There's forest all around them. If you can look.
So
in
they can go
pictures.
hunting.
Hang on, let me show her in the pictures. I hate that. Okay.
Matriarch, there really wasn't. They were.
See, there's forest all around.
Leo was saying the matriarchal or patriarchal. They really weren't. They were very, very balanced, and it was more of a partnership for everybody. And it would almost have to be. I mean, the older they were, the more respect they had, because those houses had entire families in it. It wasn't like you get married, you go out and get another house. No, you get married, you get a section of the house. You know,
Right.
It was very, very, very family.
Community.
Yeah, community. And the older ones were more respected. You know, they were the ones with, whether it was male or female, they had more say in things.
Do you want to answer some of these questions?
Yeah, just a second. Just making sure. And as far as trading goes, they bartered. You know, well, I really like this piece of cloth you made. Well, what are we going to trade for?
Sure,
You know,
makes sense.
So, okay.
Okay, let's see. First of all, we got to this one. Did they use the monolithic stones? Yes. And you're saying that the aliens helped them cut those monolithic stones or move those monolithic stones?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And really, some of those monolithic stones came from those terraces that they built.
Well,
Wherever possible.
And they had a quarry nearby as well.
Right. So, you know, that they had everything they needed. It took time and a lot of people. So
Amanda's asking how many languages were spoken.
Okay, guys, how many languages? 10 is what I'm getting. But they all had with the basis of one, but it was like 10 dialects.
Okay.
So they could communicate.
And who taught them to garden? I think you said the aliens actually.
Aliens did, yeah.
And White Dragon, what was the purpose of the whole thing? It makes no sense to me. They were actually well, from what I read, they're actually trying to stay away from the Spaniards.
Mm-hmm. They were trying to stay safe. That's why it looks like a
fortress.
A fortress. These were peace-loving people who didn't want to be ruled, and they didn't want to give up their gods and what everything was.
So did they come there from somewhere else?
Just down the mountain. It's kind of like Americans leaving Europe and coming for freedom to America. That's what they were doing. And they did it in such a way that people couldn't find them. And that was the idea.
So. Amanda's were pilgrims visiting before construction.
Yes, they were. They were the pilgrims. And then they built where they said, this is home. And a lot of it says that they burnt a lot of buildings and things when they left. Well, that's why there's no roofs. But that's also why some of those terraces are empty, because they didn't have rock buildings on there.
Right. They had wooden things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And were those homes, or were those like shops or markets, or?
Most of them were kind of homes.
Okay.
Because as they grew, of course they would over time, they needed some place, even a large building is going to get too small for that extended of a family. Mm-hmm. So they have to start breaking off and finding new places.
Okay.
Without leaving the area.
What kind of interaction with the ETs? Did they form any treaties or bonds?
Most of the interaction, from what I'm getting right now, is through the priest. And the priest sent it through the shamans, and it went down to the people. So most of it was, and the king, you know, all of the aliens met with the leaders went from there.
Disseminated it through the shamans and stuff.
Right.
And we found, and how did they educate their people?
Mm-hmm. Educate. Well, when you have huge families like that, the older people teach the younger people.
Makes sense.
And
Makes
also,
a village.
right. And I think also when they were in their large groups of people spinning, you know, in community, I imagine there were people there teaching the kids.
Right.
Because all the moms and older ladies are there spinning. What are you going to do with the kids? You take them with you and you have somebody take care of them and teach them. Where
Yeah,
crystals.
they taught each other. That's how all those types of societies really
Mm-hmm.
worked back in the day. Do you know if they used any crystals or anything like that?
Crystals were not plentiful. Those who had crystals were like shamans and they would use them for healing. But they were not
Cool.
every day like every family had any. You know, they were human sacrifice, not often, usually animal.
How were they controlling the weather?
Not the Incas. They knew how to adapt to it, but the Incas didn't control it. And I was going to say, as far as what was the last question before then?
Human sacrifices.
If they had tried human sacrifices, the aliens would have said no.
Cool. I like that.
Okay.
Sexual rules or cultural rules regarding matriarchal or patriarchal?
Like I said, it's pretty much
Balanced.
and it had to do with who's been here the longest, more than it did, are you male, are you female? You are a revered ancient person. You are revered because you are a crone, or you are a guy who's done all these. You know, they were the ones to go to. They were the ones that had final say. The oldest.
Right. And where did they go in the end? What happened to them?
They realized they were going to be discovered. They left. And they went, they were pilgrims again. And the reason they burnt things is they didn't want anything left there for those people they knew were going to invade. They were in such a position, they could tell they're getting closer and closer and closer. We got to get out of here, which they did.
Who's they are getting closer and closer?
Spanish.
Okay.
The Spanish and those who joined the Spaniards.
Okay.
They were in danger. They left. Where did they go? They went looking for another place. I don't know where they found it or whether they found it or not, but they were fleeing for their lives and taking everything that they could. So that, you know, and once they realized that there was nothing they can do, they were going to be found. They would no longer be free. They would no longer be who they are. They got out. And
well, Leah, you just got a shit ton of questions.
okay.
Hang on a minute.
Okay.
Leah wants to know, did they reach unity consciousness?
Some did. Not all of them.
How did they handle conflict?
They had like a council A
I just
local
got
council person.
tribunal in my. I got tribunal.
It was almost like, well, what they're saying is like this local area had a council. And if that didn't go right, I mean, if that was not, or they had trouble getting a resolution that way, there was a higher up one that had representatives from all the areas so that
Cool.
it was independent. And if that didn't work, you call the big guy the king and the priest.
Right.
But basically, it was like you have a court system here, you have a higher
Sounds
court
like it.
here. Yeah. But it was all pretty much balanced. And like it wasn't like one area had more representation than another. It didn't happen. But it was just basically, what is your conflict? What started? How do
Right.
it was more of a discussion with the elders, because
That
they
makes
were generally older people, those who had been around longer. And like I said, the older you were, the more revered you were.
cool.
So
Did they have any particular type of burial rituals?
yes, but I'm trying to figure out what it is. It's they didn't bury anybody.
Be a little hard and solid rock.
Right. They didn't bury anybody. I get the impression that it's like there were certain places, certain temples where, and they would have some kind of a service, but at the end of it, or after everybody had left, or it wasn't really done publicly, but they would cremate the bodies. And I don't,
Well, that makes sense in why they found so few bodies there.
no, they didn't keep, no, they didn't. They didn't keep the bodies, and they were really good at the cremation. There really wasn't anything left. But it was not done publicly. And it was done by the shamans and specific higher up priests or things like that, because there was a specific order to things so that there was no disrespect to the body.
Cool.
So
Okay, so Leah's like, how did the priests get chosen? How did they use the bones for the garden? Pyres, perhaps.
I was thinking in my mind that they were using some of the ashes there, but in the
That
garden.
makes sense.
Yeah. Of course, it was done in such a way that, like I said, there was no disrespect.
And it wasn't public.
And it wasn't public.
Interesting. Do you know how they chose their priests?
They were chosen by other priests.
Huh.
They would the shamans would go. They were involved with everybody, and when they saw somebody who they thought would make a good shaman, he was brought in and taught, or she was brought in and taught.
Well, that's
and
cool.
then the shamans decided from them who were the most likely to make a good priest, and they would go to a special school to learn things, and the priests themselves would choose them as to who was going to actually be a priest and who was going to return to be a shaman, things like that.
That's very interesting. Makes sense. Leah says she is a plant specialist in South America in a past life. Any other questions, you guys? Oh, what did they use for entertainment? Was there entertainment?
They liked to dance, and they played music on instruments that they made. Drums were very, very popular.
And flute.
And they might have a 2 or 3 stringed instrument that they would play. But generally speaking, it was mostly flutes and drums. And they love to dance, and they love ceremonial dances, and not necessarily around a fire, but they oftentimes were around a fire. They would dance at home. They would play at home, play instruments, and do whatever they wanted, things that would normally bring up your consciousness and your vibration. They did that in the home.
That's cool.
They would tell stories. That's a lot of how they would tell their history. But they did a lot of things that they just plain enjoyed doing. Some of the younger men loved hunting. They went out and they were the hunter-gatherers. So, it's what they felt like doing.
Lovely.
Leo, you can bug the heck out of me anytime you want.
No kidding. Great questions, Leah. Appreciate that. Definitely. Spiritually, the priests were in charge. They were a higher vibing community, it sounds like, than some of the others in that area.
They were very peace loving, and they loved doing things that would raise for us, they would raise the vibration. I don't know if they were aware of doing that. They just knew they felt good when they were doing it.
That's so neat.
So,
and music always makes you feel good, doesn't it? Well, usually, unless it's not meant
and of
to.
course, with all the trees that are there, they can make flutes like crazy. So,
wow, that's lovely. Thanks for that, Heather. That's really interesting information. And the Incas were the ones that wasn't there before. And were there any civilization that came after the Inca that used their land at all? Or was it they just hit it and that was it?
they hid it the best they could. But when everybody got there and didn't find anything, they deserted it. Nobody wanted to live there. They said, this is just too harsh, and they left. So nobody ever went in and did that after them.
Interesting.
But they were there for a good long while. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do they have your friend Alex? Are you in chat? Can you chat with him right now?
Yeah, he's been answering a lot of the questions.
Thank you, Alex. We appreciate it very much. Does he have any final words for us?
Let's see. Is anything final? He enjoyed living there. It was peaceful. He had lots of friends. They did lots of things that they liked to do. They had like outdoor races and games that they played. It was a peaceful existence, and he was sorry they had to leave.
Right. Well, thank you, Alex, for being here tonight and sharing with Heather all the information you gave us.
Yes, thank you.
Wow, that was
it wasn't like seeing everything. It was more like, I'm here, this is what went on, because they decided there are so many pictures that my looking through really didn't make much difference.
right. But that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know who teaches remote viewing, Leah, other than the Institute in West Virginia. What's his name?
And I can't teach it because I think of where I want to be and I'm there. I don't know how I'm there. I'm just there.
If you can astral travel, you can probably do it. But if you don't know how to astral travel, I don't know. What is the Institute's name in West Virginia? Monroe, the Monroe Institute.
Yes, they do.
He taught, they were the original teaching the military, the United States military how to do it.
Yeah, and they teach it differently than I actually remote view. I mean, they say, they give you points and say, go there.
Well, we don't know how they teach it now. That's not how they taught me. That's not how they were teaching me when I tried to learn. So, good for you, Leah. Heather's a Pisces too, so maybe That's what she says. Use your imagination, because you're there. You just don't believe you're there because you've been told, oh, it's only your imagination.
And I've got to tell you that when I first realized I was where I wanted to be, I would get so excited that I'd be out of it already. And I wouldn't get to see hardly anything. And they told me, slow down, take your time. You're not going anywhere.
Just relax.
Relax and look. And that's all you got to do. Slow down. Don't get so excited like I did at first.
They say that a lot about astral travel too. People, they realize they're outside their body and boom, they're right back in it. They're up, they're on the ceiling looking down going, wow, I did it. Boom.
Back in the body.
As soon as you look at your body, you're back in the body, they say. I don't know, because I've not been able to do that.
And trust what you're being told. Sometimes it's really hard. You really talking to me? Are you really telling me these? And when I'm asking you a question, that's the answer? Really? You need to believe in yourself.
Yeah, that's true of thank you, Leah. That's right. It's the Monroe Institute.
Yes.
They're phenomenal. And I have wanted to go there for years, but they use binaural beats, and binaural beats makes my restless leg insane. I cannot handle binaural beats. Akila says, I was thinking I'm going to try to astral travel there. I got an image of what they look like. So ran to Google. Yep, they look just like the image I got. Very wise. Akila, that's wonderful. So you're another one that can do a remote viewing. Maybe you can get with Heather and compare notes.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, the very first time I remote viewed, I just figured I had a real good imagination. But when I went to go work at the place that I had remote viewed, it was exactly like what I had seen. I'm going, I haven't ever been here before, but this is exactly where I was, So
thank you for the love for the RLS. Yeah, it's a lifelong battle. It's crazy. Okay, so today is Tuesday. Have you decided what next Tuesday's show is going to be yet?
I was, and I have to talk to you about it, but I was thinking one of two things.
Cool. Okay. We don't know what that is, but Saturday we have Terry Suzuki from Terry, and she's going to do Terry's Tales. And I haven't talked to her yet, so I have no idea what charming tales she's going to tell, but it's always fun.
And it's so interesting, really.
Yeah. Her tales are very interesting. Heather, yours are very interesting too. We love these remote views. They're fantastic. And the fact that you can go back and answer questions at the same time, and you had a guide this time that came and helped to that night. That's pretty freaking awesome in my book.
I appreciate it.
That's amazing. So thanks a lot for doing it.
So
yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun. I think it'd be a whole lot of fun. So I guess we'll see you guys on Saturday. It's a full moon. Go watch Diana and Valerie's show if you all didn't get a chance. I got to watch about 10 minutes of it, darn it, but I'll go watch it. Be sure and write out all those things that you want to release that are no longer serving you. Burn it in a fireproof dish and say bye-bye, because you no longer need those things. And this is the time of release from what everything I've been reading about. Heather, love to you, and thank you so much for tonight. It was fascinating as always.
Well, we're good.
I guess we'll see you on Saturday evening, 8:00 Eastern. Terry Suzuki. Until then, take care of yourself.